The winter rain hammered against my tiny basement window like 1,000 angry fists. I watched the droplets race down the glass, each one a miniature river of despair. Sitting on this lumpy cot that had been my entire world for the past 4 years, I couldn't help but see my own reflection in those tears sliding down the pane. I'm Daniel Morrison, 73 years old, and living like some forgotten relic in the basement of what used to be my son's home. My boy James. God, how I miss him. The old heating system groaned somewhere above my head, but you know what? That warmth never made it down here to where I slept. My daughter-in-law, Christine, always said heating the whole house was too expensive. Said I should be thankful she even let me stay after James vanished. After they pulled his SUV from that cliff edge near Salmon Arm. After the authorities declared him dead, even though they never recovered his body. I pull my threadbare blanket closer. 73 years on this earth, and here I was, living like a prisoner in what should have been my family's sanctuary. But it's Christine's house now. Everything got transferred to her name so fast after James was declared legally dead, it made my head spin. The house, the bank accounts, his life insurance. $2.3 million, they told me. I never knew my boy was worth so much in death. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what I'm about to tell you, it changed everything I thought I knew about loss, about family, about survival itself. Above my head, I heard footsteps. Christine's voice cut through the floor like a knife, sharp and commanding. Then another voice, deeper. Her brother, Victor. Over the years, I'd learned to recognize the sounds of their private conversations, the way the old floorboards creaked when they gathered in that kitchen right above my little prison. They thought I couldn't hear them. Or maybe, just maybe, they stopped caring whether I could. I pressed my ear against the cold ceiling, my heart already racing. The old man's becoming a liability, Victor said. Even through the floor, I could hear the menace in his tone. What do you expect me to do? Christine shot back. Toss him out on the street? He's got nowhere else to go. That's not my problem. He's useful, Victor. Someone has to watch Ryan while I'm at the office. Ryan, my grandson, 8 years old now, and I barely got to see him anymore. Christine had him in some expensive private academy across town. Said it was for his future. Said I was too old, too confused to help with his studies. I saw my grandson maybe an hour each night when Christine allowed me to feed him dinner before she whisked him off to bed. You need to cut him off completely, Victor continued. My hand started trembling. His pension check goes straight to you every month, right? Every single month. $1,400. I told him it was for room and board. The fool signed the papers without even reading them. Christine's laugh made my blood run cold. And he doesn't know about the second policy? How would he? James took it out privately through my father's insurance firm. $3.2 million on top of the original policy. That senile old man downstairs still thinks his precious son only had the one policy from his employer. The floor creaked as someone moved closer. I held my breath, pressing harder against the ceiling. Your father did excellent work hiding the paper trail, Victor said, but we need to stay cautious. James has been gone 4 years now. If anyone starts digging, nobody's digging. Christine's voice was ice. Who would? James's father is a confused old man living in my basement. His friends think he relocated out of grief. And James? Well, everyone believes James is dead. I stumbled backward, my hips slamming into the metal cot frame. The screech of metal on concrete echoed through the basement like a gunshot. The voices above went dead silent. My heart, oh God, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode right out of my chest. 73 years old, and I felt like I'd just run a marathon in the snow. James. They were talking about James like he might still be breathing somewhere. Footsteps thundered toward the basement door. I threw myself onto the cot, yanked the blanket up to my chin, squeezed my eyes shut, played the part they'd already written for me. Just a confused old fool who couldn't harm a fly. The door crashed open. Light flooded down the wooden stairs. Daniel. Christine's voice dripped with fake sweetness. Are you awake down there? I didn't move, just kept my breathing steady. In and out, in and out. like a man deep in innocent sleep. She stood there forever, I swear, just watching, just listening. Then the door slammed shut, and darkness swallowed me whole again. But I wasn't the same man anymore. Not even close. For 4 years, I believed my son was dead. For years of mourning, of missing him, of feeling like my entire world had been ripped apart. I'd given up my apartment, my independence, every shred of dignity I had left because I thought I had nothing. Thought I should be grateful Christine even gave me a roof over my head while I helped raise her son. But if what I just heard was true, if James was alive somewhere, everything I thought I knew was a lie. I waited until the house fell completely silent, until I heard Christine's bedroom door close upstairs, until Victor's pickup truck rumbled out of the driveway and disappeared into the night. Then I sat up, and let me tell you, my mind was racing like a freight train with no brakes. Where'd I even start? I had no money. Christine had convinced me months after James disappeared to sign over my pension. Said it made things simpler, less complicated. I had $13 in my wallet, no vehicle, no phone except the ancient flip phone Christine had given me that barely worked, and I knew she monitored it anyway. I was trapped, completely and utterly trapped. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Ryan's school bus pulling away. Christine worked downtown at some big law firm, never came home before 6 in the evening. They gave me hours. Hours to think, hours to plan, hours to figure out how to save my son. I climbed those basement stairs slowly, my knees screaming with every step. The house was spotless as always. Christine had hired a cleaning service, paid for with James's insurance money, of course. She'd made it crystal clear I wasn't allowed to touch anything in the main living areas. My job was to stay in the basement, come up only to cook Ryan's dinner, then return to my hole. But today I went to James's old office. Christine had converted it into a storage room, packed with boxes of things she claimed she'd deal with eventually. My hand was shaking as I opened the first box. Old photographs spilled out. James is a little boy with gaps in his teeth. James in his university graduation gown. James and Christine's wedding, both of them so young and hopeful. James cradling baby Ryan at the hospital, tears of joy on my son's face. I had to stop and wipe my eyes. No, I couldn't break down now. I searched through box after box, looking for anything, any tiny clue. Then at the very bottom of the last box, hidden beneath old tax returns and forgotten utility bills, I found it. A folder. A brown manila folder that looked like it had been deliberately tucked away. Inside were insurance documents. The first policy I already knew about, $2.3 million from James's employer, paid out to Christine 18 months after he was declared dead. But beneath it lay a second set of documents. A private policy, $3.2 million, taken out just 7 months before James disappeared. The beneficiary, Christine Morrison. The insurance company, Harper & Sons Insurance Limited. Harper, Christine's maiden name. Her father owned the insurance company. My breath caught in my throat. I pulled out that ancient flip phone with trembling fingers and photographed every single page. The images came out grainy and barely readable on that tiny screen, but it was something. Evidence. Proof. Then I heard it. A car door slamming outside. I rushed to the window. A sleek black Mercedes sat in the driveway. Not Christine's car. Someone else's. I shoved the folder back into the box, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Footsteps on the porch. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I stood frozen in James's office, paralyzed with fear. The doorbell rang again. Then a knock. Then a voice that made my knees nearly give out. "Grandpa, I know you're in there. It's Emma. Emma, James's daughter from his first marriage. Ryan's half-sister. She'd been 13 when James vanished, living with her mother up in Vancouver. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. Christine had forbidden all contact. Said it was too painful for Ryan, too confusing. But that voice didn't belong to a 13-year-old girl anymore. I opened the door with shaking hands. Standing on the porch was a young woman, maybe 20 or 21, with James's piercing dark eyes and his stubborn jawline. She wore an expensive leather jacket, designer jeans, and carried herself with a confidence that took my breath away. "Grandpa," she said softly, and I could see tears already forming in her eyes. "We need to talk. Get in the car." I just stared at her, at the Mercedes, at the designer clothes that must have cost more than my monthly pension ever was. "Emma, sweetheart, where did you? I'll explain everything," she interrupted, glancing nervously at the street. "But not here. Christine could come back any time. Please, Grandpa, trust me. This might be your only chance." Have you ever had a moment where everything you believed was suddenly turned upside down? Drop a comment and let me know. Something in her voice, in those eyes that looked so much like my son's, told me this was it. My one shot at the truth. I grabbed my jacket and followed her to that Mercedes. The interior smelled like leather and new possibilities. Emma started the engine and peeled out of the driveway before I'd even buckle my seatbelt. "Where are we going?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can talk." She glanced at me, and I saw tears streaming down her cheeks now. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner, but I had to be absolutely certain. I had to have real proof." "Proof of what?" She took a deep, shuddering breath. "That my dad is alive." The world tilted sideways. I'd suspected it, hoped for it, but hearing it from Emma's mouth made it real in a way that absolutely terrified me. "Where is he?" The words barely made it past the lump in my throat. "I don't know exactly," she admitted, "but I know he's alive, and I know Christine and her family are behind everything." She drove us to a coffee shop way across town, far from Christine's neighborhood. We huddled in a corner booth, 2 coffees going cold between us, and Emma opened her laptop. "I'm in my 3rd year at UBC," she explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Business and forensic accounting. Last year, for a class project, I decided to analyze life insurance fraud cases. I was curious about Dad's case because it never made sense to me. Dad was the most careful driver I knew. The idea that he'd just drive off a cliff on a road he'd driven 1,000 times. She shook her head. She pulled up file after file. Police reports, accident scene photos, insurance claims. "Look at the timeline, Grandpa." She pointed to the screen. "Dad disappeared on April 3rd, 4 years ago. His SUV was found 5 days later at the bottom of a ravine outside Salmon Arm. But look at this." She opened another document. Bank records. Dad's credit card was used at a gas station in Kelowna on April 4th, the day after he supposedly disappeared. The police wrote it off as fraud, someone who found his wallet. But look at the security footage. She played a grainy video. A man in a baseball cap and dark sunglasses pumping gas into a pickup truck. The timestamp read April 4th, 10:23 a.m. That's Dad's height. Dad's build. The way he moves, Grandpa. That's him. I leaned closer to the screen, squinting. The video quality was terrible, but the police said it could be anyone. "I know, but there's more." She pulled up more records, her hands shaking now. Phone records showed Dad's cell phone pinged off towers heading east from Kelowna toward Alberta for 4 days after his supposed death. Then it went completely dark. Why didn't the police investigate this? Emma's face went hard. Because Christine's father has connections everywhere. Harper & Sons insures half the police vehicles in British Columbia. They donate to every law enforcement fundraiser. They have friends in very high places. She paused, swallowing hard. And because they found a body. What? 7 months after Dad disappeared, hikers found human remains at the bottom of that ravine, burned beyond recognition, mostly just bone fragments. The DNA was too degraded for a definitive match, but it was close enough that Christine could claim the insurance money. I felt like I might be sick right there in the coffee shop. Whose body was it? "I don't know, Grandpa, but I don't think it was Dad." Emma closed the laptop and looked at me with eyes full of tears and determination. "Grandpa, I've been investigating this for 2 years. I worked 4 different jobs last year, saved every single penny. That's how I afforded the car, the clothes. I needed to look successful, established. I needed people to take me seriously when I asked questions." "And what did you find, sweetheart?" Her jaw clenched. "Christine's father, Thomas Harper, has a history. 5 other suspicious insurance fraud cases over the past 23 years. Nothing was ever proven, but the patterns are there. Disappearances, convenient deaths, Massive payouts. She leaned forward, and I found a connection to Victor Clark, Christine's brother. Yes, I know Victor. He's always at the house. Victor has a criminal record. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. He served 3 years in prison 12 years ago. When he got out, he went straight to work for Thomas Harper. She grabbed my hand across the table. Grandpa, I think they've done this before. I think Dad isn't their first victim. My coffee had gone completely cold, but I couldn't have drunk it anyway. My throat felt like it was closing up. Where do we even begin? Emma reached in her bag and pulled out her phone, showing me a satellite image. A property surrounded by dense forest, isolated and remote. We start by finding Dad. I've been tracking financial records, property transfers, anything that might give us a lead. 2 months ago, I found something. A property in rural Alberta, near Hinton. Remote. Isolated. This property was purchased 4 years ago, 3 months before Dad disappeared. She zoomed in on the image. The buyer was listed as a numbered company. But when you dig deep into the ownership records, you find something very interesting. Thomas Harper is a silent partner. You think James is there? I think it's possible. I've driven by the property 3 times now, Grandpa. I couldn't get close enough without being seen, but her voice broke completely. I saw smoke from the chimney. I saw someone outside chopping firewood. Someone who moved exactly like Dad. Hope and terror wrestled in my chest, both trying to win. We need to call the police right now. With what evidence? Emma's frustration spilled over. Everything I have is circumstantial. Security footage that could be anyone. Financial records that show suspicious patterns but no actual proof of a crime. The police already closed Dad's case years ago. Christine's family has money, connections, an army of lawyers. If we go to the police now with what we have, they'll bury us before we can blink. Then what do we do? Emma's eyes met mine, and I saw James in every line of her face. That same determination, that same stubborn courage. We go there ourselves. We find out the truth. And then, when we have real, undeniable evidence, we burn Christine's entire world to the ground. We spent the next 9 days planning everything down to the smallest detail. Emma rented us a cabin outside Red Deer, paid for with her savings. I told Christine I needed to visit an old friend in the hospital, that I'd be gone for about a week. She barely glanced up from her laptop. Fine, whatever. Emma picked me up 2 blocks away from the house. The drive to Hinton took almost 7 hours. Emma drove carefully, constantly checking her mirrors, watching for anyone who might be following us. She brought supplies, warm clothes, a professional camera with a telephoto lens that probably cost more than I wanted to know, binoculars, a digital voice recorder. If we find Dad, she explained as we drove through the darkness, we need documentation. Photographs. His testimony recorded. Enough evidence that the police can't possibly ignore it. The property was exactly where the satellite images showed it would be. A small cabin set back from the main road, surrounded by towering pine trees and snow that looked untouched for miles. Smoke drifted from the chimney like a gray ghost against the twilight sky. We parked over a kilometer away and hiked through the forest. The snow was waist-deep in places, and my old legs struggled with every step, but Emma was patient. She helped me over fallen logs, through drifts that tried to swallow us whole, until we finally reached a vantage point overlooking the cabin. Emma set up the camera and binoculars with practiced efficiency. Then we waited, and waited, and waited. Hours crawled by. The sun traced its path across the winter sky. My fingers went completely numb despite the thick gloves Emma had bought me. But she never stopped watching, never lost focus. Then the cabin door swung open. A man stepped out, carrying an axe. He was bearded, much thinner than I remembered, his hair longer and streaked with more gray than it should have been. But the way he walked, the way he tested the axe blade with his thumb before setting a log on the chopping stump. "Dad," Emma whispered, tears pouring down her frozen cheeks. "Oh my God, Grandpa, it's Dad. It's really him." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at my son, my boy, alive and breathing and chopping like he'd been doing it for years. James worked for maybe 25 minutes. Then he gathered the firewood and went back inside the cabin. "We need to get closer," Emma said through her tears. "We need to talk to him. What if it's a trap? What if someone's watching him? Then we deal with it. But Grandpa, we cannot leave here without at least trying." What would you do in this moment? Would you rush in or wait? Let me know in the comments. We waited until full darkness fell like a blanket over the forest. Then we approached the cabin, moving as quietly as two people could through crunching snow. Emma knocked on the door. Silence. Then footsteps from inside. The door opened just a crack, and James stood there, his eyes going wide with complete shock. He looked from Emma to me, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to form words. "Dad," Emma said, her voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. "It's us. We found you." James glanced past us into the darkness, fear flooding his face. Then he grabbed us both and yanked us inside, slamming the door behind us. "What are you doing here?" His voice was hoarse and rough, like he hadn't spoken to another human being in months. "You can't be here. It's not safe. They'll kill you. They'll kill all of us." "Dad, we know everything," Emma said, grabbing his hands. "Christine, the insurance fraud. Thomas Harper, we know they faked your death." James sank into a wooden chair, burying his face in his hands. "You shouldn't have come. You never should have found me. Tell us what happened," I said, finally finding my voice. "Please, son, tell us the truth." And James told us everything. James's hands shook as he poured us coffee from an old pot on the wood stove. The cabin was sparse, just the basics: a cot in the corner, a small table, some shelves with canned food. "It started changing after Ryan was born," James said quietly, staring into his coffee cup like it held all the answers. "Christine became different. Cold, distant, obsessed with money in a way she'd never been before. I thought it was just stress from being a new mother, you know? I thought it would pass." He took a shaky breath. "Then I discovered she was having an affair with one of her father's business partners. When I confronted her, she just smiled. Actually smiled. Said I'd never divorce her. Said I'd never leave her because her father had a plan for us." "What plan?" Emma asked. I didn't understand at first. I laughed, told her I wasn't afraid of her or her father. That was my first mistake. James's voice cracked. 2 weeks later, Victor cornered me in a parking garage after work. Told me I had a choice. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. He said I could disappear, fake my death, live in hiding with a new identity, or they would kill me for real and make it look like an accident. Either way, Christine would get the insurance money. James looked at me with tears streaming down his face. I didn't believe him, Dad. I thought it was just a bluff, some kind of sick intimidation tactic. So I went to the police. And I whispered. The officer I spoke to? Thomas Harper's brother-in-law. The moment I started explaining the situation, I saw it in his eyes. He already knew. They'd already gotten to him. James's laugh was bitter and broken. That's when I realized I had no way out. No one turned to. Christine's family had connections everywhere. Police, lawyers, judges. They owned this whole region. So you ran? Emma said. I ran. They staged the accident, burned some poor, homeless man's body, collected the insurance money, and I've been living here ever since. New name, new identity. Too terrified to leave. Too ashamed to contact anyone I loved. He looked at me with devastated eyes. They told me if I ever try to come back, they'd kill you, Dad. They'd kill Emma. They'd make it look like accidents, just like they were going to do to me. So I stayed here, alone. I thought I was protecting you by staying dead. Emma was crying openly now, no longer try to hide it. Dad, we can fix this. We have evidence. We have her testimony. We can go to the police in a different city, somewhere Harper doesn't have connections. And what? Hope they believe us? Hope Thomas Harper doesn't have them in his pocket too. James shook his head. I've been trying to gather evidence for 4 years. I've got nothing solid. Harper's too careful. Victor's too smart. And Christine's a lawyer. She knows exactly how to cover their tracks. Then we make them confess, I said. Both James and Emma turned to stare at me. Ow, James asked. I thought about the past 4 years. The cold basement, the humiliation, the way Christine had systematically stripped me of everything I had. My home, my dignity, my pension, my grandson. I go back, I said. I tell Christine I know everything, that I have proof. I wear a recording device. Get her to confess. Grandpa, no. Emma grabbed my arm. That's way too dangerous. What are they going to do? Kill me? I'm 73 years old with a bad heart and arthritic knees. I've got maybe 5 good years left if I'm lucky. I looked at James, at Emma. But you two? You've got your whole lives ahead of you. I won't let them take that away. We argued for hours, but deep down, they knew I was right. Emma had contacts through her university program. She knew someone who worked in criminal law in Edmonton, far from Harper's sphere of influence. We reached out carefully, quietly. Found a lawyer named Patricia Chun who specialized in insurance fraud cases and had no connection whatsoever to Thomas Harper. Patricia listened to our story, looked at Emma's evidence, looked at James, alive and terrified in that tiny cabin. Her eyes went wide. This is massive, she said finally. If we can prove fraud on this scale, we're talking about criminal charges for everyone involved. Christine, her father, Victor. But we need a confession on record. We need them admitting what they did. She gave me a wire, a tiny recording device that fit under my shirt, barely noticeable. The moment they threaten you, the moment they admit to the fraud, we'll have them, Patricia said. Her face was serious. But Mr. Morrison, you need to understand. These people have already killed once. They won't hesitate to do it again. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I went back to Christine's house, back to that basement room that had been my prison. Christine barely looked up when I walked in. How was your friend? She asked, typing on her laptop. Enlightening, I said. Very enlightening. I waited 3 days. Let her think everything was normal. Let her believe I was still that confused old man who knew nothing. Then on Sunday morning, when Ryan was at a birthday party and Christine was alone in the kitchen, I confronted her. I know James is alive. She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. Then she set it down very carefully, her face completely blank. Excuse me. I know about the insurance fraud. I know about your father's company. I know about Victor. I know everything. Christine laughed. Actually laughed. You're senile, old man. James is dead. Then why was his credit card used the day after he supposedly died? Why did his phone ping off cell towers for 4 days after the accident? Why is there a cabin in Alberta registered to one of your father's shell companies? Her face went pale, absolutely white. You have no proof, she said, but her voice shook now. I pulled out my phone, showed her the photos of the insurance documents. I have enough, and I have a lawyer. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything. And I'm going to make sure you and your father spend the rest of your miserable lives in prison. Christine stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. You stupid old fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? She pulled out her phone and made a call. Victor, we have a problem. The old man knows. 23 minutes later, Victor's truck screeched into the driveway. Then another car. Thomas Harper himself, Christine's father, stepping out in an expensive suit like he was attending a business meeting instead of covering up murder. They all gathered around the kitchen table, looking at me like I was an insect they were deciding exactly how to crush. Thomas spoke first, his voice calm and reasonable. The voice of a man who'd made problems disappear for decades. Here's what's going to happen, Daniel. You're going to forget everything you think you know. You're going to live out the rest of your pathetic days in that basement, grateful we even give you a roof. And in exchange, we won't kill you and dump your body somewhere it'll never be found. You can't threaten me, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I've already told people. If anything happens to me, they'll know. Victor leaned forward with a cruel smile. Who? Who'd you tell? That granddaughter of yours? Emma. He laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. We've been watching her for months, old man. One phone call, and she disappears just like James did. You killed someone, I said, my voice getting stronger. You burned an innocent person's body and claimed it was James. Whose body was it? Thomas waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting a fly. A homeless man from Vancouver. Nobody important. Nobody who'd be missed. You're monsters, I whispered. "We're survivors," Christine said coldly. "And you're nothing. A confused old man with no proof, no credibility, and no power. So you're going to shut your mouth, go back to your basement, and die quietly. Or we'll make you die very, very loudly." The front door exploded inward. Police officers flooded the kitchen like a wave. Patricia Chun was with them, holding up a recorder. And behind her, Emma. And behind Emma, my son James, alive and real, and finally coming home. "We got every word," Patricia announced. "Every single confession." Thomas Harper's face transformed from confident to terrified in seconds. Victor tried to run, but 2 officers tackled him before he made it 3 steps. Christine just stood there, frozen, watching her entire world crumble like a sandcastle in the tide. They arrested all 3 of them right there in that kitchen. Charged them with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful confinement, and about 15 other crimes I couldn't even keep track of. Emma ran to me, threw her arms around me. "You did it, Grandpa. You actually did it." James was right behind her, and when he hugged me, I finally let myself break down. My son, my boy, alive and home and safe. The trial took 11 months. 11 long months of testimony and evidence and lawyers arguing back and forth. But in the end, justice came through like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Thomas Harper got 18 years for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. Victor got 15. Christine, because she cooperated and testified against her father toward the end, got 9 years. Her law career was destroyed. Her family's reputation was ashes. The insurance companies had to return the money. The house, the accounts, everything went back to James. He was officially alive again. Ryan got his father back. James didn't keep the fraud money, though. He donated every penny to organizations that help victims of financial abuse and elder exploitation. Said he wanted something good to grow from all that evil. Emma graduated at the top of her class. She started her own forensic accounting firm, specializing in uncovering insurance fraud. She's absolutely brilliant, and James tells her that every single day. As for me, I moved in with James and Ryan. Not in the basement this time. In the master bedroom upstairs, with windows that let in the morning light. James insisted. Said I'd spent too many years in cold and darkness. Said it was time to come into the warmth. Sometimes on winter evenings, when the rain falls against the windows, I think about those 4 years. The basement, the humiliation, the grief that nearly swallowed me whole. But then Ryan runs in asking Grandpa to help with his math homework, and James calls from the kitchen asking if I want tea, and Emma texts to say she's bringing dinner on Sunday. And I realize something beautiful. The darkness made the light so much brighter. Those years of suffering taught me what truly matters in this world. Not money, not pride, not even justice, really. Family, real family. The people who risk everything to find you. The people who never give up, even when the whole world tells them you're gone. The people who love you enough to fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. I'm 77 now. The doctors say I've got maybe a few more good years if I take care of myself. But there'll be years spent in warmth, in love, in light that no one can take away. And you know what? That's more than enough. That's everything. Because in the end, we didn't just survive. We won. We reclaimed our lives from people who thought they could bury the truth forever. And if an old man living in a basement can find the courage to stand up to monsters, so can you. Whatever you're facing, whatever darkness is trying to swallow you whole, remember this. You're stronger than you know. You're braver than you believe. And you're never, ever truly alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here until the very end. May your own story, whatever it is, find its way into the light. And may you always, always have the courage to fight for the truth.